What is going on, everybody? I'm AJ, and I'm going to give you guys the breakdown for UFC 260. Looking forward to it. Great event. Obviously, we had some bout cancellations there in the meantime. Potentially a couple could come back together here. So pretty interesting times. We got a headliner heavyweight fight for the baddest man on the planet. So we're looking forward to that. And yeah, we're going to chop it up and just get right down to business. We're going to go in the order of Tapology here. So just some quick thoughts just before getting into it. Interesting card from betting perspective. There's a couple spots that I like. I have them listed in the description if you want a sneak peek, but we'll go over those in the video as well. There's another bet that I'm potentially eyeing. I'm gonna be monitoring the line though. It's subject to change. We'll see where the odds go. See where the line opens, and then I'll make my decision based off that. So it's basically right now a few bets with potentially one more. That's kind of where my head's at for this card. So fun event, looking forward to it. It's always good to tune in for a heavyweight fight, especially one on the level of Stipe and Francis, the rematch. So first fight of the night that we'll get into, Jared Gooden taking on Abubaker Nurmagomedov. Really interesting fight in that Nurmagomedov just doesn't really have a lot of footage of him. There's the UFC debut, but it was over so quick. He took down Zawada. Sambo background. The guy's got a very good duck under double leg, but we saw there, despite controlling Zawada there for a couple minutes, he was submitted from Zawada's guard, right? So really tough to tell how good Abubaker is. Just based off the lack of data. I mean, there's just not a lot of footage of this guy on YouTube. I mean, looking at that, just looking all over the place, it's hard for me to place a bet on these fighters where there's just very, very scarce footage. It's just something that I don't want to do. If somebody wants to do it, don't let me hold you back. But when I make these bets, I want to make them with conviction that I trust that, that I'm getting value in this spot, and that the outcome that I'm the outcomes that I'm covering are more likely to happen than not. And so when we got this fight here, there's just a lot of unknowns, right? I think Nurmagomedov is good enough of a wrestler to get Gooden down. I've seen Gooden taken down on the regional scene several times, controlled. He's not a bad grappler by any means. I believe he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. He's a very tough guy, solid volume. Nurmagomedov, it's tough to tell how good his striking is. Again, going back to the UFC debut, it looks solid. He's got good range management. He's a good athlete. His punches are sharp. He utilizes the jab. That's all great. But again, it's just a very limited sample size, which begs the question, what is this guy's cardio like if he gets pushed? What is his durability like? There's just a lot of unknowns here. Gooden could potentially bring out a fight in Nurmagomedov and exploit him in areas that we maybe haven't seen him exploited in before. So I have to make a pick. I'm going to make a decision at the end of the day. I am going to pick Nurmagomedov to win because I think he's a good enough wrestler. Again, going back to that Sambo background, to get Gooden down. I've seen Gooden taken down, get controlled, and we even saw him almost submitted there by Alan Jouban in that UFC debut, right? So again, a lot of unknowns in this fight. I wouldn't be shocked. It wouldn't be this completely like crazy outcome if Gooden goes out here and wins, because again, there's just a lot of question marks on the Nurmagomedov side. But I'm going to pick Nurmagomedov. I tend to side with the fighter where I think they should be able to control where the fight goes. And I think that there's enough evidence, despite it being scarce in general, to suggest that Nurmagomedov could do that. Thank you very much, Sandra. I appreciate the support, buddy. Next fight, Gillian Robertson and Miranda Maverick. This is my first bet of the night. I actually have 1.5 units on Gillian Robertson at plus 147, excuse me. It's just like every other bet I place. It could lose. There's risk with every decision, right? In theory. So I'm not placing this bet saying Gillian's going to win this fight 100 times out of 100. I'm placing this bet because I capped Gillian at 60%, and based off the plus 147 probability, that would suggest a 40% outcome of her winning, right? So it's based on the probabilities, because it's nothing is a lock. Nothing is a guarantee. We're talking about betting here, right? I just want to reemphasize that, because I don't want us to get too hung up on the outcomes in which that play out. We shouldn't get too discouraged by them if maybe they didn't go the way we thought they could have gone, because there's many different ways a fight could play out. Again, I get it. We only see one variation of the fight happen. But when we're researching these fights, there's odds, there's percentage outcomes, there's probabilities, if you will, because there is a percentage in there. It's not a guarantee. There's only one way the fight could play out, right? There's multiple different ways the fight could play out. And so getting into this bet, appreciate it, James. Thanks a lot, buddy. I like Gillian Robertson to win this fight because I think she could control where the fight goes. I think she's a good grappler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She has the ability to chain wrestle. She does a very good job of utilizing the half guard sweep, single leg takedown, trip takedown ability, a wide variety of ways to get the fight to the ground does Gillian. And she's, again, high-level submission grappler. She utilizes a Dagestani handcuff in top position to maintain that strong control, in addition to her very good shoulder pressure. Great guard passers, Gillian, I would say. And so that's going to be how she wins this fight. I think she has to get Miranda down. And from there, I think she could potentially dominate. I mean, it kind of depends on how much Miranda has improved since the regional scene. On the regional scene, I've seen Miranda struggle in terms of defending takedowns. There's footage of her not even really sprawling on takedown attempts. There's footage of her struggling to scramble off of her back. There's footage of her getting held down for multiple minutes. And again, she's a young lady. I think she's very talented. I think she has upside, but she probably has improved since that fight. But again, how much? I'm referring to the fight against Pearl Gonzalez that she had on the regional scene in Invicta. And so again, this is a risk I'm willing to take because there's the footage that's out there. There's enough footage out there that makes me feel good about placing a bet. And Gillian saying like, hey, she should be able to control where the fight goes. She's a better grappler in my opinion. And she could hold top position because she's very strong in top position and maybe even get a finish. She's got very nice composed elbows from the top position, does Gillian, and she's a submission threat. Miranda is going to be the better striker here. She's more technical. She's got a Muay Thai background. She's a very, very good rhythm striker is Miranda. I'm very impressed with her striking. Her combos are beautiful. Her variety is very nice. But I actually kind of trust Gillian to kind of stay out of danger here because one thing I like about Gillian is she's very aware. She has the fight IQ to know exactly what she wants to do. She's not going to go out there and try and strike with she hasn't shown to go out there and try and strike with a fighter where that's not her most likely path to victory, right? She wants to get the fight to the ground to impose her game by any means necessary. And she's either all the way out, standing out of range so she doesn't get hit, or all the way in trying to take you down. That's what I like about Gillian's game. And so again, on the feet, it's going to be Miranda looking like the favorite, but I believe if Gillian gets this fight to the ground, gets in top position, she could look like the favorite. So it's a true striker versus grappler matchup. I'm going to side with Gillian Robertson. I cap her around 60%. Awesome. Glad we're on the same page there, man. Shout out to him, by the way. He's always in the comments. Really appreciate it, man. Let's go here. Azaitar and Marc-Andre Barriault. Another fight where there's just a lot of unknowns, right? Azaitar, the Azaitar brothers, right, have come into the UFC, and the fights that we have seen them in, that they've gone out there and they've won, right? The guys are both winners. They have very strong winning percentages on their record. We have not seen Abu since 2018 against Vitor Miranda in that UFC debut, where he showed that he's aggressive. He'll attack you in a flurry. He's very tough. He's strong. But the technical aspects of his game, we saw in that fight, even in against Miranda, could be improved. He's not the most technical striker. Again, he's trying to attack you in a flurry. And again, he could threaten a lot of guys with that power and that aggression. And he is durable himself. So that'll be a problem against a lot of fighters. And potentially it's a problem here against Barriault. But the striking technique, the defense, those are all things that I think he could have tightened up in the meantime. But again, I don't really know, considering the last time we saw him was, again, almost 3 years ago now. Defensive grappling wise, he even showed some susceptibilities there as well, right? We saw Vitor Miranda take him down and mount him more than once, right? He was able to win that fight because, like I said, he's very tough and strong. And, say when Miranda was trying to pass guard while in transition, Azaitar is just such a physical guy that he was able to buck him off and reverse him. But again, the technical acumen of his game is something that, again, there is some room for growth there. And so with a guy like Barriault, he's kind of the same type of fighter, I would say. Like, he's not the most technical striker, but he's aggressive. He'll pressure. He'll throw combos at you if he hasn't you backed up against the fence. He's more like a bullfighter. Like, he'll just come at you. He's so durable and tough. He's probably the better grappler of the two is Barriault, but I still don't think he's like a great grappler. He's more so a grappler that, again, kind of like Azaitar, he's more so strength and power rather than purely technique. He's going out there and picking up Yako over his head and kind of just tossing him down. It's, again, the guy's strong, but it's not the most technical cardio conserving method to fight a hard 15 minutes and win a technically based decision or even finish down the stretch. So we've got two guys that are similar in their fighting styles, not the most technical, but again, really tough, strong, durable. But why I side with Barriault here is because he's been much more active. He's coming off a USADA suspension. So that's, again, there's some unknowns there on his side. But again, more active, younger as well. We're looking to hear just 4 years, but, again, being younger, being a little bit taller, 6'1" compared to 5'9", at least according to Tapology. We'll see exactly how they look at weigh-ins. But yeah, it's just a fight I don't want to bet. It could be fun because, again, they're both, again, they're not afraid to come forward. They both have a lot of faith in their durabilities, and rightfully so. So yeah, I'm gonna be enjoying that one from a fan perspective, but I don't, respectfully, I don't really want anything to do with it from a betting perspective. Same thing with this next fight. Yep. Awesome, Sandro. Appreciate it, brother. Jessica Penne and Hannah Goldy. This is another fight where it's like, I think Penne is the better fighter pretty much everywhere. I think she's a better striker. She's more technical. Neither has good defense on the feet. They both could do a better job of moving their head off the center line. But Penne's got a 6-inch reach advantage here. Goldy does a very good job of like moving laterally on the outside. She's a striker. She'll attack you with like kicks on the outside. She's more of like a point fighter, I'd say. Penne will walk you down, throw with volume, throw combos. I think Penne's the better striker of the two, and she's the better grappler, I'd say. Judo background, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She's the more well-rounded and skilled fighter, I'd say, is Penne. But Penne is another fighter where, again, she's coming in on a layoff here. I mean, she has not fought since April 2017, right? And I just don't know where she's at. This is another fight where there's a decent age gap here as well, as we can see on Tapology. Again, if somebody wants to take a shot on Penne or Goldy, by all means, don't let me hold you back. It's your decision to make at the end of the day. But this is just a fight where I want nothing to do with, because, again, I think the more skilled fighter here is Penne. But when we're looking at just the aspect of just been so inactive, activity is such an important thing in this game, right? I mean, not to say that people need to be going out there and fighting as frequently as Kevin Holland or something in 2020, but these long layoffs, they're meaningful. I mean, even if you're doing all this training in the gym, a lot of the fighters say it's a completely different ball game when you're actually in the octagon. Get that octagon time, accrue it. So yeah, it's just something that I don't want to invest in. I'm picking Penne because I tend to pick the fighter that is the more skilled fighter, which I think she is. No bet for me though. Nothing to do with it, if I didn't make that clear already. Modestas, Bukauskas, and Michal Oleksiejczuk. Now this could be an interesting fight, potentially a finish here. They're both guys, I'd say, excel as strikers. Oleksiejczuk comes out really hot. A southpaw striker. I'd say he's a boxer mainly. He'll pressure. He throws really hard, and he utilizes a ton of feints and footwork, does Oleksiejczuk. And like we saw against Antigulov, like we saw against Vellante, we even saw that against St. Preux. He could hurt guys early. I mean, he's got that power. Dynamite in that right hand, did Hardy say, the counter right hand when he knocked down Antigulov. And I don't think Bukauskas has good striking defense. He throws a lot of naked low kicks, which we saw just his last fight. Crude counter him and hurt him. So he leaves his chin in the air, does Bukauskas, just willing to trade in the pocket. That's part of the reason why I had a lot of conviction on my Crute bet against him, even though Crute was such a big favorite, is I just thought Crute had him covered everywhere. But he's got reach here, does Bukauskas, and he's the more varied striker. He throws kicks. Oleksiejczuk doesn't really throw kicks. He's mainly just a pressure boxer, right? So the way I see this fight is Oleksiejczuk is probably going to come out hot. And if he could knock out Bukauskas, because Bukauskas was knocked out cold by Crute, and he's been knocked out cold on the regional scene one other time, and he doesn't have good striking defense. And Oleksiejczuk is aggressive. Just going to get to a couple comments here. Mad Mike, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, totally hear you on that one, brother. James chiming in as well. Thank you. Nice body shot, always open. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he works the body, which I like. That adds to another layer with varying his attack. And that might be enough to get him the job done. But my hesitancy with Oleksiejczuk is that cardio, man. I mean, we saw that against St. Preux when he couldn't get St. Preux out of there. I mean, we saw him slow down. I mean, he was gassed, towards the end of the first round, right? And I don't ever really want to bet a fighter where I don't think that they have a solid 15 minutes of cardio in them. Not to say that the fighter needs to go out there and fight at a high of a pace as Colby Covington or Kamaru Usman or somebody like that. But again, a good enough of a gas tank to where I'd feel like, okay, they're not going to just completely fall apart. They haven't shown that tendency like, say, they did in the past. Where Oleksiejczuk, we saw that just a couple fights ago, and it wasn't even that late into the fight, right? So I got to favor Bukauskas as the fight goes on, just based off the cardio discrepancy. I don't think Bukauskas is like a cardio machine, but I trust his cardio much more for 15 minutes. I trust his variety much more. He's also got 4 inches of reach here on Oleksiejczuk. So it's truly a fight where I think that I am going to side with the fighter that is going to be a bigger threat early, and that is Oleksiejczuk, in my opinion. So it's going to come down to Bukauskas weathering that storm, which, again, don't get me wrong, he can. It's very possible as long as he doesn't get knocked out. Oleksiejczuk could tire, but we'll see. It's one that I don't want any part of from a betting perspective, but from a DFS perspective, which I play, it is one that I am interested in. Shout out to RotoWire, by the way. I will be releasing my FanDuel article will be released later on this week, so shout out to them. Next. Main card, right? Yeah. Alonzo Menifield and William Knight. Yes, the rematch. Just going to get to a couple comments here. Too much volatility to bet either side. Yeah, I mean, that's the name of the game right now, right? I mean, it's how risk averse are we to make these decisions? And some people are more than okay making a decision like that. Personally, for a fight like that, I would rather pass. There are some fights where it may be a little more volatile than others. I'm willing to take that chance, but not on a fight like that, man. So I totally hear you on that. James contributing as well. Bukauskas has very good cardio as well, extremely good comeback fighter. Yeah, I mean, there's I know James does his homework, and I know that he's seen fights where Bukauskas he there's a lot of fights of Bukauskas where he in Cage Warriors where he's losing early on, he's getting out grappled, and then the guy weathers a storm and he comes back and he wins by knockout. He's got that resiliency in him, which I love to see in fighters just Bukauskas. And that was another angle. Thank you for bringing that up. That was another angle why I liked Crute against him, was because I was confident that Crute could out-grapple him, even though we didn't really get to see the grappling there. I think Crute shot maybe one takedown, and that was it. But I had faith that if Crute got that fight to the ground, he'd be able to impose himself and maybe get a finish. So, yeah, he is a very good comeback fighter. So it's one of those early versus late fights. And again, I wouldn't be shocked to see Bukauskas win. It wouldn't be this oh my goodness scenario. So more power to the guy. But now Menifield and Knight broke this fight down with my guy John Kelly a few weeks ago when this fight was first announced. And it's a fight. I just think it's just a lot of very high variance, very, very high variance. I think Knight is one of these guys that he's not the most technical fighter, but he's so physically strong that if this guy gets on top of you on the ground, even if you're a big guy, I mean, he could keep you there based on his strength. And the guy does know good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu concepts as well. He looks to sink in the hooks, to present at the back. He'll look for submission. So the guy's he's certainly not a bad technical Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. And then you couple that with just his extreme physicality. I mean, if you haven't seen pictures of the guy, I mean, he looks like he could compete in Mr. Olympia, for crying out loud. The guy's got one of the best physiques in the UFC, if not the best. As does Menifield, that's why it's so crazy, right? Because like either of these guys, I think, could finish the fight early, but we've seen it time and time again with these guys with big muscles in the UFC. Muscles require oxygen, and so if these guys are clinching, if there's like a lot of like negated grappling exchanges here, we could see them both tire out, and that's not an outcome that I think maybe it's not the most likely outcome, but it's truly a fight where there could be a finish early on. Maybe Menifield knocks out Knight, because I don't think Knight's a great striker, at least yet. He's just very raw. His chin is high. Just he's just not the most technical striker. But again, he's a young guy. I wouldn't be shocked to see him improve. So Menifield, he's not the most technical striker either, but I think he's a better striker than Knight. And we've seen Menifield, he has power. And so he's got good enough takedown defense, I think, to keep the fight standing, does Menifield. We saw he did a good job against Clark, I'd say. But the time we did see Clark get him down, Clark took his back. And that's the thing, that's the risk with backing Menifield here. Even if we're confident that, say maybe he stuffs most of the takedowns, it might take one takedown for Knight to get in top position to where he holds Menifield down, and that's the round, right? Because the guy is just so big. And I know Menifield is big too, but if Menifield's gassed and he's in the bottom position, Knight could do something. I mean, again, he's got those submissions. We saw that towards the end of one of the rounds against Oleksiejczuk, where he's very sneaky with it. He'll just sort of casually grab an arm, and then he'll just all of a sudden just use all that strength to just almost rip his arm off. It's crazy. So it's a fight where I want nothing to do with, as you could probably guess from a betting perspective. DFS, again, different story, just like we talked about with the last fight. It is a fight where they both gas and it doesn't produce a high score, but it also is legitimately a fight that can finish. And that is why I would want to target it, the upside. I'm not worried about downside in DFS because, again, like we say, there's risk with all these decisions. I want to target it thinking about the better case scenarios, right? Not so much the downside. There's always downside with these decisions. And we'll see exactly what happens, right? Those are my thoughts there. Just going to get into some comments here. Appreciate it, HV, underrated. Appreciate it, brother. Appreciate you, brother. Let's do this. Next fight, Jamie Mullarkey and Khama Worthy. Another fight I got to bet on. I like Mullarkey here, and I don't know if that's a hot take or not. I mean, I think he's a better grappler here. I mean, there's a lot of fights of Worthy getting taken down and getting put in vulnerable positions. We saw Luis Pena mount him, take him down, control him on the ground, especially in round 2. I've seen there's regional footage of Worthy having an opponent's back, and seconds later, they have his back. That is a clear technical mistake right there, right? And again, I'm sure he's improved in the meantime, but there's a lot of footage of Worthy struggling on the ground. And I don't think Mullarkey is a great grappler, but the wrestling that I've seen out of him, I think it's good enough to get the fight to the ground, where he's a pretty solid top control grappler. He looks to pass guard in top position. He's fairly strong. He's technically good. Not the most athletic guy. Worthy's going to have that advantage there. Worthy's going to be the better striker. But it's a true grappler versus striker matchup. Mullarkey being the grappler, Worthy being the striker. And I don't think, even though I favor Worthy on the feet, I don't think Mullarkey is severely outgunned. I mean, again, he could get knocked out. He's obviously been stopped via strikes a couple times. Obviously, the guy's very tough. We saw that in the Brad Riddell fight, but and we know Worthy has power, but they're both kind of robotic on the feet. They're both fairly, again, their striking is coming along, and Worthy is a bit better, a bit sharper, I'd say, but a bit more I'd say cleaner with his reactions and whatnot. But Worthy has been stopped via strikes multiple times. So I wouldn't be, shocked to see one of these guys hurt the other. I think they're both kind of capable of that. Although I would say that Worthy is more capable of hurting Mullarkey than vice versa. Because again, I do think he's a better striker. So why I cap Mullarkey as a slight favorite here, 60%, is because I think he's good enough to get the fight to the ground. Therefore, he's able to control where the fight goes, which is why I like to favor those fighters. So it's a risk I'm willing to take. Again, if he can't get the fight to the ground and it's 15 minutes of stand up, he very easily could lose to Worthy. Because like I said, I think Worthy's the better striker. But my reason for this bet is because I think that there's value on the line in which I got it at. And Mullarkey, good enough wrestling to get the fight to the ground where he should be able to maintain top position, he's not the most aggressive damage inflictor, if you will, on the ground, but maintain top control, pass guard, and maybe threaten with a submission or two. So like Mullarkey more in the matchup, that's why I'm betting him, and we'll see exactly how it shakes out. Thomas Almeida and Sean O'Malley, we're looking forward to this one. Let me just jump into some comments here again. Thank you very much. James Mullarkey has a path of victory, but he's very athletic. He may be, yeah. I mean, I hear you, man. I think I understand what you're saying. That the athleticism is something that, yeah, maybe just Worthy is so much more athletic than him that, for whatever reason he can't really get going. But we'll see. I could see both ways. I think that's where you're coming from on that comment. Apologies if I misinterpreted that. But yeah, good stuff, man. And then one more from you. May be able to muscle up from bottom position. He has advantage on the feet and power advantage, but yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, I mean, just like we talked about with the Azaitar and somebody else on this card, these guys in terms of the grappling realm, they're not the most technical, but their strength and athleticism allows them to kind of explode. Get it? They get that one opportunity and then they're able to work their way back up to the feet. So again, thank you for pointing that out. Again, there's always risks with the bets that I'm placing. I'm not saying Mullarkey's a lock. I'm not saying he's a guarantee to go out there and land takedowns. I just like the value. And the tape suggests that he can land takedowns here. And if he does so, he could win the fight. Could win the fight over 15 minutes. But now we're on to this exciting fight, right? Thomas Almeida and Sean O'Malley. One thing I like to say in general about prospects is I don't always write them off after they lose once. I don't think that's fair. Because you could use the narrative whichever way you want, right? Like you could say oh, O'Malley got totally exposed. Maybe his confidence is gone because of the Vera loss. He might not be the same. But you could also use it on the flip side and say, well, now O'Malley learned his lesson there. He switched up his training regimen. He made improvements. He really honed in on what he wanted more. He improved layers to his game. We won't really know how O'Malley responds until we actually see him in there, right? So I'm not ready to say that, because I still think he's got a lot of potential, right? I mean, let's think about a lot of fighters in the UFC who have become champions that have lost early on in their careers. And this is just a few examples. And again, I know that there's been plenty that didn't work out, but Robert Whittaker, right? We saw him lose a few times when he first came into the UFC. Okay, Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, right? I mean, these guys that we know and love today that have become champions, that are so accomplished in the sport, lost early on in their UFC careers. And I'm not trying to say that O'Malley is for sure going to be a champion. I'm just saying that I'm optimistic still about his future. He's still a very talented fighter. And who knows, maybe the loss could have been a good thing for him. Maybe it forced him to go back, reflect, and get better. So again, we'll see exactly how he looks. I do think this is a winnable matchup for him. I think he's got the better tools at range. I like his variety with his kicks, the push kicks, the range management is on point with O'Malley. Excellent reactions, great counters. O'Malley checks a lot of boxes in terms of the striking department. I like the feints. It's beautiful. And Almeida, also a great striker, right? We know Almeida is very dangerous. He's got a lot of power in those hands. Muay Thai striker is Almeida, and he's got low kicks, which are notable here because like we saw against Vera, O'Malley got hurt to his leg, right? And we also saw him hurt by Sukmantov. So I would expect Almeida's going to try and come out here and land leg kicks. And that's just purely speculation. There's a chance that he doesn't, but he showed the willingness to throw him last time against Martinez, right? So there's certainly a chance. If O'Malley, assuming his leg doesn't get totally just destroyed and he loses, I think he's got this fight. I understand why he's the favorite here. He's more durable than Almeida, and that's such a big deal in MMA is durability. Cardio is also very important that I've talked about, but so is durability. And again, Almeida did not get knocked out last time against Martinez. He did not, but he still got rocked there. And we saw him knocked down by Jimmy Rivera a couple times. We saw him knocked out by Rob Font. We saw him knocked out by Cody Garbrandt. O'Malley's a dangerous enough of a striker, a good enough of a technical striker, counter striker, to where I wouldn't be shocked to see him hurt Almeida. I think that's probably what happens over the course of 15 minutes when these two are standing. Again, Almeida's path victories to land those low kicks. Again, he's not a poor technical striker by any means as Almeida, but again, the willingness to just throw a lot of combos in the pocket and kind of admire his work, so they say, to stay in there a little too long, leaves the opposition that Almeida faces with countering opportunities. And that's what I was alluding to with the Martinez fight. That was a countering opportunity that Martinez hit Almeida with a big shot and hurt him because Almeida was throwing long combinations in the pocket and, again, not moving out of range. So a sharp striker like O'Malley, potentially a better version of O'Malley, could exploit that. It's also possible he doesn't too, but I like O'Malley's better tools at range. Again, Almeida will have those low kicks, but then Almeida's other path victory here is wear O'Malley out. And we didn't get to see the Vera fight play out. That would have been interesting because I've always kind of wondered about O'Malley's cardio because we haven't really seen him go far since the Tyron Ware and Andre Sukmatov fights a few years ago, where he slowed down in both of them. He's really tough. He pushed through it. I mean, he went on and won both of those fights, right? But that would be an interesting scenario should this fight get extended. What is Sean's cardio like? It could have improved in the meantime, but it is still it's still an unknown, right? So I'm going to side with O'Malley. Again, I'm going to stand by what I say. I'm still optimistic about his future. Maybe I'm totally wrong on that, but I think that I think the man has the tools to succeed long term. And I do believe in him. So, and this is again a tough test for him, but we'll see exactly how he looks. So, the Sugar Show, right? So Sean O'Malley's going to be my pick. Going to get to a comment or two here. 0 to 100. O'Malley, yeah, I'm with you, man. O'Malley, I think he wins. Again, it's possible he doesn't, but I mean, I think, again, I think he could. The durability is such an important thing, and maybe we could question O'Malley's durability with his leg, right? But Almeida's just been hurt in so many fights, right? Even fights that went on to go to decisions. So yeah, I think most likely O'Malley wins, but I don't want to bet it. Just going to kick back and enjoy it. Anaconda Bet says Sugar Show will be back on track. Yeah, man. Again, I'm glad you see it the same way because, again, it's just, to me, and again, people could have whatever opinions or judgments they want at the end of the day, but I'm not going to write off a fighter just because they lose one fight early on in their career. To me, that's just not fair. Like, again, I pointed out 3 examples: Whitaker, Holloway, Poirier, all lost multiple times early on in their UFC career, and look how they panned out, right? If I was writing off all these fighters just because they lose early on in the career, that just wouldn't be fair. I would just be way too skeptical about their future. I wouldn't have as much faith as, say, I do now that things would pan out well for them. And again, maybe I'm totally wrong on this, but I think that O'Malley he's already proven to be a good fighter, but he's got a bright future, I think. So there's always reason to believe that these guys, that the losses early on could force them to go back to the drawing board, improve, and get better. Sandro, I see your comment, buddy. I'm going to save it until I get to that fight, though. Yeah, 100%, man. Again, right on the money. Yeah, I mean, and again, he could lose, but I agree. It is a winnable fight for him. So let's see. Yeah, the Vera fight was a little different because with Vera is so durable, right? I mean, we saw Vera go 3 rounds with Lineker. We saw Vera go 3 rounds with Yadong, guys that hit very hard. We knew that Vera was going to have that durability in that fight, right? And that would have been interesting had that fight gone extended. Because even though O'Malley's dangerous and that sort of thing, what would his cardio have looked like had it gone on? But again, it's still an unknown that's floating out there. Didn't get that question answered. Maybe we do in the future. So enough of that, though. Tyron Woodley and Vincente Luque. This is my second to last bets on the. Oh, good point, Sandro. Yep, I see you now. Yep, that's a great point. So Sandro pointing out Stipe got KO'd by Struve, guys. Early on in Stipe Miocic's career, he got KO'd by Stefan Struve, right? And look at what happened to Stipe since, right? Obviously, he lost to Santos in the meantime, but look at Stipe's resume, right? 2 wins over Cormier. I mean, he had obviously a loss in there against Cormier too, but he went back. He beat Cormier twice. He beat Ngannou. He beat Dos Santos in the rematch. I mean, Mark Hunt. I mean, the list goes on and on. Stipe's got a hell of a resume. I mean, the heavyweight GOAT, some say, right? He's got the most title defenses as heavyweight champ. But again, another guy where he lost early on in his career. So people might have been a little pessimistic about his future based off that loss to Struve, but look at how he turned out, right? There's always reason to believe that things could go on the upswing, right? So thank you for pointing that out, Sandro. That's Sandro clarifying that's what he's talking about. Thank you for clearing that up. Yeah, he did. 100% he did. That's what champions do, right? They make adjustments, right? So yeah, and that's what Stipe is. That's why we know and love him. One of the many reasons. Okay, so Woodley and Luque. To me, it's just another fight where I think Woodley has to win by knockout to win. And again, it's possible Luque is hittable enough to where it wouldn't be a total shock. We've seen Luque hurt. We saw him hurt by Barberena. We saw him hurt by Thompson a couple times. We saw him hurt by Price in the rematch. It's not like it's impossible, but Woodley at this point right now, he's just not as willing to engage. He is seemingly at the end of his career. Like, where is his confidence? I mean, he was once a champion. He's a guy that has a win over Stephen Thompson, Darren Till, Robbie Lawler. I mean, another guy that has an impressive resume, but since losing the belt to Usman, he's just been losing rounds consistently. He's very athletic and explosive and as powerful as Woodley, but now that he's, seemingly near the end of his career, those sort of tools that he once had that were so threatening have seemingly regressed. And it's not that they're completely gone or anything, but it makes his path to victory to win fights more limited than, say, they were in his prime. And so why I like Luque here is because, assuming he doesn't get knocked out, I just think he's the better round winner. He's the more technical striker. I think he's better counter fighter. He's got the low kicks, which Woodley stands very heavy on that lead leg. I think those will be there for Luque. And he's got much better volume. So it's kind of he's not, obviously Luque is not the same fighter as Usman and Covington and Burns, these guys that have that grappling threat, especially like the aggressive grappling threat in the case of Covington and Usman. But Luque has volume and pressure and power, right? He is a finisher as Luque. Woodley has shown to be durable throughout his career, but I mean, it wouldn't be a total shock if Luque's able to land on him consistently, and then who knows, maybe find a finish, right? So it's Woodley, I think, needs to most likely win by knockout to win. And again, it is possible. I just laid it out there that Luque's he's been hurt in the past. He's still never been knocked out, but he's been hurt and he's hittable. So I'm acknowledging the ways my bet could lose, but I also think that Luque is the better round winner here with his better volume, better striking, in a fight that I think is going to be won or lost in the feet, just because Woodley just hasn't shown the willingness to wrestle in like years, right? He just doesn't really go to it, and it's because of his cardio, right? He's a very densely muscled, explosive guy, and just like we'll get into with like Ngannou and some of these other guys that we talked about, the muscles require oxygen, and so they've only got so much energy over the course of 15 minutes than, say, a guy with like more leaner muscle mass does. And so he needs to conserve, and so he needs to, I think, rely on moments. And I tend to side with the fighters that will win the aggregate of the exchanges, I think, going into it. And that's, I think, Vincente Luque. So that's my logic there. Vincente Luque is going to be my pick. And I also, I'll mention, if for whatever reason the picks were not clear, here, me talking about it on video, they're all posted below in the comments. So again, if you just want to fact check, just feel free, go have at it. Before we get into the main event, a couple comments. Big problem. Okay, well, I actually missed a few. Okay, so Sandra says big problem about Woodley is that his game hasn't. Yeah, that's it, man. Right? I mean, that's just, to me, he's always been a guy that just relies on the big power and the athleticism and the explosiveness, right? And he is a well-rounded guy. I mean, he's a college wrestling background, very high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but he just doesn't use his tools to their fullest potential because he's a moments guy, right? He relies on the big power and trying to hurt the opposition. But when those knockouts couldn't come, like we saw in the last few fights, he lost, and he lost clear. I max bet Usman against Woodley with that sort of same thought process. I got Usman as an underdog. Usman was an underdog going into that fight, and I just saw the fight as Woodley had to knock him out. Otherwise, he was probably going to lose. So that's why I tend to side with those fighters that I think will win the aggregate of the exchanges, the better strikers, the better wrestlers, the guys that fight at a higher pace, not the guys that need a moment. And sometimes that's all it takes for some of these guys. They need, like Francis Ngannou that we'll get into. He needs just a moment and he could win. But I tend to think that I'm on the value guy, especially as an underdog who has the better round winning tools over the course of 15, 25 minutes. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But That's just a risk I'm willing to take. So thank you for that, Sandro. Do you think we see Woodley have any success wrestling? I've seen a couple. I mean, can he? Yeah, he can. It's possible. He just hasn't shown the willingness to. Like, let's pull up some stats here. Got UFCstats.com in front of me. Pardon that. I was actually looking into Bellator. Woodley. Okay, so the last time he landed a takedown was actually against Colby Covington. And albeit it was very brief, I saw it. He just kind of briefly took him down, and Colby got right back up. But, Stephen Thompson, he landed one takedown in 2017. Like, if we look at the stats over the long haul, he lands one takedown, 1.08 takedowns over the course of 15 minutes. So, again, possible, but he just hasn't shown that willingness to, like, that's his plan A game plan. Like, I'm going to go out here and wrestle. Like, again, it's possible. Maybe he makes some adjustments with, coming off 3 losses. His back is against the wall. Maybe he feels like if he really wants it, he should change something up. But I don't think I could count on Woodley to go out there and wrestle. I think he's mainly a striker. So that's why I like Luque. And Luque still, even if this fight goes to the ground, Luque is a very capable submission grappler, as we've seen. Very dangerous there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Luque maybe threaten him on the ground. So, but that is an interesting point. So thank you for bringing that up. 0 to 100 says Woodley. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, man. It happens. I mean, I didn't bet him against Burns, but I actually picked him against Burns. And then because again, going after the Usman fight, it's like, you could just, I kind of looked at it as like, well, Usman's just so dominant. I mean, that could happen to anybody. But then the Burns fight was like, whoa. Burns is a really talented fighter, but he's not exactly a guy that really puts it on you for 25 minutes. He doesn't have like elite cardio. I understand it. Like it happens. I mean, he's always kind of been that dangerous guy, but if he can't find the knockout, it's tough for him to win rounds or find the knockout or hurt the guy significantly like he did against Thompson. So just something there. There is nothing really. Yeah, I mean, again, that's a fair opinion. The reality that I always say to myself is if I sit there and think about it for long enough, I can make a case for any value or any outcome. I could convince myself if I sit there and think about it long enough to make a bet. But that's why a practice that I do is I look at the fights and then I make a decision on a bet immediately after the research, so everything is fresh in my head. And then once the decision is made, on to the next thing. Like, I don't even want to think about it anymore. Like it's done, it's out there, and whatever happens, happens. Because for example, I finished up this card a couple of days ago, and after that, I started looking to the Bellator card. I just want to make sure that I'm focused on something else so I don't feel like I'm like tempted to go back or anything like that. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, man. I mean, there's always cases to be made. I think Woodley, we'll get into a few more and then we'll get into the main event, of course. Thank you guys so much. I think Woodley will probably enter with a great game plan, but feel the power. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's a good point because he's been so timid, right? I mean, even you could even make a case that he's been more gun shy in these recent fights and say maybe even was in the past, because in the past he just seemed like a more confident fighter. He's just like, when I'm going to blitz, when I'm going to go, I'm going to hurt these guys. And like you just saw the burst in Woodley, the explosion. Like when this guy decides to go, when he decides it's go time, I mean, he's a serious threat. But now it's just like he's just very, very, like you said, just he freezes, like you said. So it's just it might be a confidence thing, to be honest. Again, that's just me speculating. It could be way off on that, but he was once a reigning champ, and then he's lost clearly these last 3 fights. So it's tough to tell exactly where he's at. Again, he's still got the power; he still can win this fight. But again, I do agree with you that he's been freezing. Sandro, thank you very much. Plus 110, I remember. Yeah, I think you're talking about Usman. Yeah, Usman. I think I got in on him a little earlier, like plus 150, maybe. That's something that, I mean, you could always get an edge in betting in situations like that. Anytime there's, I talked about it last week with Lock of the Night, but yeah, you're clarifying here, Usman. Thank you. There's value on these spots that there's hype on the favorite. Like we talked about it last week with Holland and Brunson, right? And we could have been wrong. Holland could have gone out there and won the fight, whatever. But from a process-oriented perspective, I liked Holland because he had the stylistic tools to exploit, expose, however you want to word it, Holland. We saw Holland take it down in pretty much every fight prior to that fight, right? And assuming Brunson didn't like gas horribly or get knocked out, I liked his chances in that fight because he was being undervalued, in my opinion. Holland had hype on him, right? He's coming off a crazy knockout against Souza. Everybody's hyped about it. Holland's he's been the guy that was the most active in 2020. Everybody's hyped on Holland. I love Holland too. But when we talk about the stylistic matchup, and when we talk about that matchup against Brunson, that was a good style matchup for Brunson on paper. Yet he was the underdog. And again, all due respect to everybody that was on Holland, I'm not saying he made a bad bet. I'm just trying to rationalize why I was on the Brunson side and why I think that there's value in these sort of spots where there's hype on one fighter. People get really excited when we see a fighter is the champion, especially usually fighters that are champion are the favorites, or they're undefeated, they're on a winning streak, they're coming off a lot of flashy finishes. Those tend to inflate betting lines. In finding the right spot on the underdog and the right stylistic advantage, that will make profit long term. Just like the Brunson example last week, just like Dustin Poirier against Conor McGregor the second time, just like even if you took the shot on Vera against Sean O'Malley the last time, right? There's always those sort of cases, right? And that's not me saying that I want to fade every hype train and every matchup where they're a big favorite. No, that's far from the truth. I want to pick the underdog that I think is being significantly undervalued per the betting odds based on the stylistic matchup, not so much the hype train. The hype is real. It inflates the betting lines, right? And a lot of the times it is justified. It's always justified, but if you could get the right matchup, those are the chances that I like to take. And that's part of the reason why, as Sandro mentioned, Usman, underdog, right? It is what it is, man. Again, I could have lost the bet and I would have been okay with it. Again, it's fine if it's fine if it happens, it's fine if it doesn't, but it's just a spot that I want to bet on prior to it. And I miss plenty of times on stuff like that, but that's just something that I feel good about going into it. So again, sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. It's just the nature of the game, variance, if you will, probabilities, outcomes. It's all mixed in there, right? So thank you for that, though. So we're here to talk about the main event. Lastly, Stipe and Francis, the rematch. And so we saw the first fight. We could take a lot from how rematches could potentially play out based off the rematch. Obviously, a lot has changed since then. But in some ways, it's kind of a similar dynamic. Like Ngannou, he's gotten better, I think. Maybe his cardio has gotten better. We haven't really seen it tested since. Against Stipe, he gassed, obviously. He gassed very early in that fight in round one. He went 3 rounds with Lewis, but like they barely threw any punches. That was just a very low tempo, low pace fight. They were just very respectful of one another's power. But then since then, Ngannou's been going out there and doing his thing and knocking all the opposition out quickly. And we know this about Ngannou. He's so dangerous, so fast, his athleticism, his IQ. This is a man who, he's the most dangerous man in combat sports history. I'm gonna make that claim right now. The most dangerous guy in the octagon in combat sports history. He is just, his power is just unmatched, is Ngannou, and his speed, his timing. He understands range better now. Working with Eric Nixick in Las Vegas, that's a great look. So it's a similar fight where I think Ngannou most likely will knock out Stipe in rounds 1 or 2 if he wins, because again, he's, like we just talked about, all those factors that he has. And Miocic, he's durable, definitely durable, but we saw him get tagged up a lot by DC last time, a fighter that Cormier that doesn't nearly have the reach of Ngannou. Stipe had about 8 inches of reach advantage on Cormier. Stipe absorbed over 100 significant strikes against Cormier, both fights, the trilogy and the rematch. First fight was obviously over in the first round, but Ngannou will have opportunities to land, especially early while he's fresh. He will have opportunities to land on Stipe, and maybe he knocks Stipe out. I mean, just because they went the full 25 last time and Ngannou didn't knock him out the first time doesn't mean he can't do it again. It's still very possible. And again, this is my last bet on the card is on Stipe. So I know what I'm getting myself into. It's going to be one of those bets where maybe people say after the fact, oh, this bet had no chance. Stipe had a chance to win this fight, and maybe it just didn't work out maybe the way so some of the outcomes suggested it could. Ngannou, I think, more than likely will win this fight early if he wins, because he hurts Stipe with a big punch and knocks him out. If he doesn't knock out Stipe, I think Stipe probably wins. He's just got the much better cardio, in my opinion. He's a better wrestler as Stipe. We've seen him go 5 rounds multiple times, fight at a high pace for heavyweight standards, landed over 100 significant strikes against Cormier in the trilogy in the rematch. In the first fight against Ngannou, he got tired, but he still wrestled. He had over 15 minutes of control time. He took Ngannou down. Once he was able to survive the early onslaught of Ngannou, Stipe was able to control the fight essentially. There were some hairy moments here and there. He had to be mindful of his P's and Q's with Ngannou on the feet. And that's what he'll need to do here. But Stipe still is not. He's not the inferior technical boxer here. Stipe is a Golden Gloves boxing champion. He's got better volume. He's a better combination striker. But it's going to be in Stipe's best interest, I think, to get the fight to the ground, because if he's just even if he's the better technical striker than Ngannou with better volume, that's just a very dangerous game, obviously. So that's the way the fight comes down to. Ngannou could win quickly in rounds 1 or 2. That's how he's only won fights in the UFC in rounds 1 or 2. So again, while possible, this cardio is improved in the meantime. We still don't know. But if Stipe is able to survive on the feet, I think that he could take Ngannou down, tire him out, and maybe get a finish himself. It was really impressive. Somebody brought this up on Twitter. It was very impressive that Ngannou, despite gassing early in the Stipe fight, he went a full 25 minutes. I mean, the guy's really durable. He's never been finished as a heavyweight, right? So that's even scarier about him, right? I mean, the guy can knock out anybody, and then he's tough to knock out. Still is possible though. Stipe, again, he still could knock him out. Stipe did have some success tagging him up in the first fight. He even looked like he hurt Ngannou there. So again, it's going to be one of those bets where I'm fine with losing, but I also feel good placing it, because I just feel like if Stipe wins, it's going to be, he should be able to control the grappling and maybe even get some licks in on the feet with his, assuming he's fresher than Ngannou down the stretch. So I'm going to side with Miocic as far as a pick, because I think he's the better round winner. I think he's a better technical fighter. But if there's anybody in the UFC that has that sort of like, they only need that one moment to get the knockout, it is Francis Ngannou. He is the epitome of that. The guy is, again, athleticism, speed, power, unmatched. The guy is just a freak, right? So that's the way I see the fight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate the support. Again, AJ, you can follow me on Twitter at AJ_SCHULLO. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a nice comment. That'd be much appreciated. I wish you all the best of luck on the events, and have a nice day.